Hi everyone, it's Adam here. Just quickly before the podcast gets started, and it's a really good one this, I wanted to bring you an exciting update and ask you to keep Saturday the 6th of December free in your calendar because we are going to host the first ever RailStuff Open Day. It'll be based in Uttoxeter in Staffordshire, right next to the A50, which links the M1 to the M6, so it's nice and central, and you'll be able to browse the full range of RailStuff gear, meet a bunch of friends of RailStuff, all to be announced in due course, and we might even have a couple of layouts and demos on show there as well. All that kind of stuff to be confirmed, so keep your eyes peeled for this. You can come and meet the team and get involved. So keep Saturday the 6th of December free for the RailStuff Open Day. Right, time for a podcast. Hello and welcome back to another episode of RAILpeople, the podcast from RailStuff. My name's Adam. Hopefully you've listened to us before, but if you haven't, then welcome along for the first time. And of course, for those of you that are regulars, you know that we always start with a bit of a selfless plug. Anyone who's new, welcome to selfless plug time. RailStuff is a retailer of model railway scenics and accessories, so if you need any of those kind of bits, especially your paints, your trees, your weathering equipment, your airbrushes, anything like that, jump on RailStuff.com, and you can use the code POD10, all in capitals, at checkout. That's POD10 to get 10% off your first order. Although I say that, actually at the moment, what is it, 30th of May, there's 2 days left of our 10% off everything sale, so you don't even need a code right now. Just jump on the site. Anyway, that's selfless plug over. I'm sure there'll be a couple more slipped in there from time to time. But of course, this podcast is about talking to people, hence the name RailPeople. The aim is to find different people in the world of model railways, from retailers to manufacturers to layout builders to YouTubers, and everything in between, and find out a little bit about their passion and their interest in model railways. Today we're talking to can only really be described as a master of the dark arts. It's one of those things that many of us are petrified of trying. Some people try and screw up. Others have a hidden talent for it. But most of us are just pretty petrified about starting it. I am, of course, talking about weathering. And really, the only person that we could talk to about this is Tom Foster from Tom Foster Weathering. So, Tom, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me. This is lovely. I'm looking forward to this.
Master of the Dark Arts.
I like that. I think I should have that as a sort of tagline under my name.
It is though, isn't it? It is a dark art that everyone's petrified of.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I often say to people, and other people say it as well, practice on something that's not important. I've never done that. But back when I first started out, I'd always go, by A3, we'll just start weathering it. So, yeah, it's one of those brief occasions where I say, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of that in life, right? So, but we'll come on to all of that kind of stuff in the future. But I think given recent events, it would be remiss of me not to make mention of this right at the beginning. And it is important for us to talk about this. Tom, what is your favourite cheese?
That's what I was honestly thinking. Where are we going with this? Anyway, favourite cheese. Okay, so I'm a bit, but I like cheese, and I'm a bit boring that I kind of like mild cheeses. And this will sound really cliched, but I currently live in Wensleydale. I really like Wensleydale cheese. Just
very
plain
good
Wensleydale. Yeah, no, that's good. But I'm a bit boring. So like Cheshire, anything like that. I'm not a mature cheddar fan. I don't like it when it sort of hurts your mouth, sort of thing.
Okay, but here's my opinion on this. What do people call it now? A hot take. Here's my hot take. I don't think you need to like very strong cheese to be a cheese connoisseur, because it's a bit like curry for me, right? If I go to an Indian, I will have a korma, not because I'm scared of spicy things or I can't eat spicy things or I'm soft or whatever. It's because I love the taste of korma. And if you love the taste of a milder cheese, then you crack on.
Hey, you've made my day. Thank you.
and also, this says to me that at some point we need to go find a good korma.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. In fact, I had a really good korma last week. We go off on tangents on this podcast, but
that's good. We like that. That's all right.
Maybe we call them branch lines instead of tangents.
Oh, bravo! Very good.
I had a cracking korma last week. It was from the No. 3 Curry House in Millenthorpe, Cumbria. There you go.
There we go. Okay, make a note of that. Yeah, I know where Millenthorpe is. Yeah.
So there's, and we don't actually know if it's Millenthorpe or Milnthorpe. I think it is.
Now you've said that, I think it's Milnthorpe. Now you said that. Originally, I'm from Blackpool, so unfortunately, so I know sort of the northwest quite well.
And I don't know what it is, but that curry house was good. And apparently, so we did a collection, but apparently, because there's a pub right next to it, I think called the Bull's Head or something, and apparently if you go into No. 3 Curry House and order your curry for takeout, and then say, I'm just going to nip next door for a pint, they will come and bring your bag of curry into the pub and find you and say, there you go.
I mean, this is perfection, surely.
Yes, I'm liking the sound of this. But anyway, none of this is weathering related, and that is what we're here to talk about. Well, no, we're here to talk about you as well. But let's start with your model railway business, Tom Foster Weathering. For those that don't know much about it, tell us a bit.
So I've been doing weathering for about 15 years now, which was initially on my own stock and things, and then I started to sort of post a lot on RM Web. That was my sort of place to sort of share my modelling, and I got friendly with Tony Wright, who's probably known who has Little by Them. I did a bit of weathering for him. And it sort of just built from there, and then I think it was 2019, so just before COVID, my income as a music teacher, because it's very variable, 0-hour contracts, teaching violin, it had started to drop. The less pupils you have, the less money you're making. And I thought, I think I need to branch out with something else. So I started doing weathering as Tom Foster Weathering back then, and then it was quite a lifesaver during COVID. And quickly, because I'd sort of made a name for myself on RM Web, clients, started to roll in, and it's just got bigger from there now. And I'm at a point now where I'm, going to be doing it full time.
Okay, so breaking news: you're going to be doing it full time. Tell us a bit more about that, because I think this might involve somewhat of a change in your life as well.
A big change. So go back to November. So I am very good friends. I'm going to say he's my best friend with Mr. Dan Everson of Tunnel Lane Model Railways. There we are. He's had his plug. That's it. There we are. So I've done my bit. He's very busy with his figure painting and with layout builds. And he just said to me back in November, he went, "Oh, if only you were an hour away." And it was like a light bulb moment. Now, I'm very emotionally attached to this house. I've lived here 20 years. I was brought up by my grandparents. Both my grandparents are sadly no longer with us. And there's a lot of emotional ties to the house. And don't get me wrong, I live in the Yorkshire Dales. It is a beautiful place to be. But when Dan said that, I was like, yeah, why not? I'm not really happy with the music teaching, whereas I do enjoy the weathering, be it for myself or for clients. So the house went on the market. It's a bit slow at the moment, and that's the big frustrating thing. But the plan is I will be moving down to Herefordshire, Shropshire, roughly that area. and we'll be working alongside Dan in his unit, doing weathering, but also working for him, doing work with figure painting for the Tunnel Lane side of things. But yeah, we'll be doing it full time, and I'm really excited. I can't wait. I just can't wait.
It sounds like a really exciting step in your life. You said you live in a beautiful part of the world. Herefordshire is not bad either, so you can be trading.
You know what? I totally agree. I mean, Dan constantly takes the mick when he comes up here, going, "There's no trees. It's all dry stone walls." Oh, I don't like this. So, and I must admit, I've been going down to Herefordshire for the last 2 years now, sort of as a friend, but obviously now sort of a bit house hunting, and I really like it down there. Apart from the roads aren't particularly great with potholes. That is a bit of a. They are particularly, yeah. You don't want to hit them at speed.
You want to try Staffordshire? Jeez.
Oh really? Okay. Yeah, we are lucky up here, maybe at the moment, sort of thing. But yeah, it's just I really like it down there. It feels. I went through a bit of a funny phase when I sort of decided to do this, and then I go down there, but it didn't feel like home, and then I feel funny coming back home. Whereas now, I feel very at home down there. I'm almost sad when I come back home, which is good. That I suppose that's you want that.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it'll be interesting for you to get down there. I appreciate the frustrations of trying to sell a house when we moved out to Staffordshire Moorlands. It was 10 years ago this year. It took us over a year to sell our house in Stoke. So hopefully it's not that long for you, and hopefully it's a lot quicker. It can be tough, but I'm sure you'll drop on the right buyer. And
well, if anybody's listening, if you want to buy a lovely 3-bedroom property that has a great big, shed that's fully insulated, 20 foot by 12, this is the house for you.
Hang on, so it's got a ready-made railway shed.
Yeah, had it done about 9 years ago. It's fully insulated. Yeah, 12 foot by 20. Yeah, it's at the moment it was the home for my big Reverend Audrey Scarlowy layout that I did. That was worked out about 50 foot when you actually go all the way around, sort of thing. So
wow. And is that still in there now, or?
It's still in there. It's great. So that was my big thing for the last 3 years. I did a realistic version of the Reverend Audrey Scarlowy railway, the narrow gauge railway on the island of Sodor. No faces, as a working railway, which is how Wilbur Audrey wrote about it in some of his extra books that he wrote about the island of Sodor. And but I was so intense with it, and so it was what I lived and breathed, and I completely burnt myself out with it. So I'm keeping the stock, and there's the original section that I built, which was originally a diorama sort of micro layout that then became 50 foot. That part I'm keeping, and I will probably have it in a display case or something just as a reminder. A lot of people have said, "Oh, you can't take it down." I built it it's on baseboards, but then it's built on top with foam board because it was supposed to be a micro layout, but it wouldn't survive, I don't think, being sort of taken apart. But yeah, that was my big passion. But yeah, I moved on to more expensive things called O gauge. Which I must admit I absolutely love doing it, and in turn I've now got quite a lot of clients sending me O gauge stuff, so it's kind of nice how my own stuff feeds into the business.
So let's talk a little bit more about the business. So like you said, you kind of started it with posts on RM Web that then turned into something, but there must have been something a little bit further back when you discovered that you had a bit of a talent for weathering. Was that something that you just did by accident, or were you thinking, I want to try some weathering, blah, 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 blah. Oh, actually, I'm quite good at it. How did that kind of come about?
I think, so around 2008, 2009, I was on, well, I still am actually, they're all there. I had a YouTube series called Northeastern Steam. It's a bit tame and cliched now, but I was trying in my early 20s, I was trying to get a bit of a realism look with steam engines, and perhaps because I was brought up by my grandparents, I have a real sort of pull towards the 1950s. So it's modern stuff doesn't do a lot for me. I'm happy to weather it for clients, just to clarify that. But it's not my interest. I love that sort of time period, the clothes, the styles. So I think I initially used some of the big names that do weathering for doing stuff. Some better than others, and it was weird, the sort of feeling of it's been just sprayed with a gunk. And it's like, oh, it's weathered now. It looks realistic, and I did feel like that. Then I started to experiment myself. I've always been into art, I suppose you could say, with the music teaching. But I used to like drawing and things, and I very much feel that my drawing probably wasn't good enough. But it's definitely gone towards the weathering. I'd say that's where being into the art side of things, and it just started. It started there, and I messed around with powders at first, and then I progressed on to using various techniques. And the biggest help I had was there was a series of DVDs called Right Track, and Tony Wright had done some of them, and Tim Shackleton had done one on weathering. And the big thing that struck me on that first DVD was you need 3 paints, you need 3 colours. It was like matte black, matte leather, 4 actually, gunmetal, metal coat, and white. You need those 4. I was like, wow, okay. And that's really still my palette, and I mix it.
Wow.
And that's probably the big thing. Tim Shackleton and also Martin Welch, who's another big name of weathering from like the last 30, 40 years.
I think normally this comes a little bit later in the episode, but I think I'm going to do it now because we're sort of leaning into this kind of conversation already. So we're going to hit the quickfire questions.
Oh yeah, okay.
So, and in that, I'm going to ask you some very short questions, and I want the first response that comes to your mind. No thinking about it at all. We will then discuss the answer, but we're going to start scale-wise. O, double O, or N?
O. I love O. Now it's just, it has a presence. I can have an O gauge wagon, loco, and I can just look at it and I'm like, wow. And it has that weight. Yeah, no, O. Was double O, 4 mil, that was my thing, but no, O gauge.
Okay. Brush or airbrush?
Both.
No.
I mean, I can't. I honestly, use. Okay, brush. I do use the air, but I have to use it. But the detail stuff that I do, the brush is involved with that. Actually, okay.
Okay, so yeah, but you love an airbrush as well.
Yes, I'm not going to say I love it. I don't enjoy the cleaning out. That's always like, oh, I've got to do it. The greatest thing I've had, actually, I used to be bad with like airbrushes in the past getting clogged up, and then it was Dan that said to me, cellulose thinners for cleaning. I have resurrected my airbrush when it was, I thought, I always used to clean it with white spirit because I tend to use, actually I'm not going to say because it might be a question coming up, so but I tend to, I find cellulose thinners just absolutely cleans any gunk out of it, and I have a fully working airbrush in them.
Right. You predicted correctly the next one, and I already know the answer. Acrylic or enamel? Enamel
for weathering, although I do do a bit of acrylic work, not at the same time, but I will actually. I've just done a van for myself, and I do most of the acrylic work. Enamel work, but then I go in with a couple of little things afterwards for some little detailing and stuff. So it's but enamels, there's a lot of working time with it, whereas I find acrylics just go off very quick, which is useful for certain things that I do, like when I do some figure painting for Dan and things.
Yeah.
But actually, for enamels, I can work with it for a good hour or so, a few hours.
Okay. So that's the Y as well. Very good. Powder or wash?
I have to say both. I use both equally. So wash, I use a lot for you get it all into the nooks and crannies, but powder gives me my texture. So I'm sorry, it's a both on that one. I can't go with one without the other.
Could you, in theory, turn a powder into a wash?
Yeah, I've done that sometimes. Yes.
So in which case, if one had to win, then probably a powder, because you could turn it into a wash.
Yeah, I'll go with that one. We'll we'll agree on that one.
I helped you out.
I'll meet you halfway. I'll meet you halfway on that one. Yeah, no, but powder I love. Because I have to get the question: do you fix your powders? Not really, because the trouble is, if you spray varnish over anything, you'll get a uniform look. And I like it when the light hits. And the powder, sometimes I use MIG powder. It has quite a nice oiliness to it. So, and as long as you've got a base of a paint on there, it sticks.
Yep. By the way, MIG ammo powders available at rail-stuff.com. So there's the selfless plug number 2.
Beautiful, that's beautiful. But yeah, MIG, I like MIG because it sticks. It really sticks. And I don't know if you can still get it now, because I bought a lot in bulk years ago. But the black smoke is a big favourite of mine for doing your sooty on steam locos, your sooty effect.
Yes, and so MIG have now also got a range called Rail Centre, which was basically repurposing some of their existing products, rebadging them as railway themed products, which makes sense. So I stock both the normal powders and the Rail Centre ones because there is some difference. In Rail Centre there is one that is called Soot Black, which is by far and away my most popular selling pigment powder.
Great, that is what you put that on and I'm like, oh, now we've come to life.
Have you ever tried the polished metal one as well? I like that one. No,
I haven't. That's worth me having a look at.
Yeah, so it actually gives a polished metal look and feel. So it's that's quite an interesting one.
I'll have a look at that.
It's got a very different finish to any other pigment that they do, I think. So yeah, worth a try. Back to the quickfires though. I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Steam or diesel?
Steam.
Okay.
100%. I'm born in the wrong time. I really am. I love. So I was at the Severn Valley. I was at Highley on Monday, and I watched the departure of Bradley Manor, and I had tears in my eyes. Just it's the sound of the whistle, and I do like Great Western whistles. I think they do sound good, and it was just the bark from the exhaust, and I was properly having a little moment there, fanning the face there with the tears,
That's true passion. That is true passion.
I love them. They have character. I'm not saying that diesels don't. I'm not against diesels. If I had to choose with diesels, I like the transition period. I like your early diesels. They're quite characterful. I know some of them weren't overly great. Some of the your early hydraulics and things, but yeah, no, 1950s. That's where my heart is.
Yeah, mine's firmly stuck in the 90s. I love a bit of 90s, and chuck me anything with a toothpaste livery on it as well, because I grew up in Essex, so it was all Network South East for me as I grew up. So chuck a bit of toothpaste my way, and I'm in heaven.
I'm not. If I see an intercity livery, I get a little bit of a. That's what I sort of agree. I turned 40 at the end of this year in October, so born in '85. I'm.
Okay, I mean 84 was the better year to be born, but
Well, I'll let you have that extra year on me. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm very much feeling my age now as well. The creaks and the lower back pain is there, anyway. But never.
I've been quite. But obviously, this week's half term, so I've just been doing weathering this week, and I've really enjoyed it. It gave me a glimpse of how things are going to be. But I've been really bad for going to bed at falling asleep on the sofa, and then it's like last night it was like 2:30, and I was like, oh, shouldn't have done that. And then you wake up in the morning, and you're like. I'm too old for this sort of student lifestyle.
Yes, we definitely are these days. I'm going to make things slightly more tricky for you then. So we've done steam, diesel, and that was easy. But what if I said diesel or electric?
Diesel.
Oh, okay. It wasn't that hard actually. Yeah.
No. I like there is the sound of a diesel opening up. I'm thinking of like a Class 37. Yeah, diesel definitely.
Okay. And then the final quickfire. West Coast or East Coast?
East Coast, I'd have to go. Yeah.
You grew up in Blackpool, man.
I did, but Wesley, Pacifics, so we're talking East Coast Main Line of sort of from the 1930s to the 1960s. I'd probably say only because it was a big part of my life, but I do like the West Coast stuff. When you've got Duchesses, blasting up Shap and things like that. So I definitely say West Coast is more scenic.
Okay. And faster. Is he faster? No, not faster. More. No, more curvy. More curvy.
More curvy, yeah, definitely. I was going to say, I think Mallard and its speed limit,
Yeah, more
speed
curvy.
record, sorry, not limit, yeah. But yeah, no, it's going through the Loon Gorge on the M6, and I think to myself, gosh, go back 60 or 70 years, there was no M6, it was just the railway through here.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, okay, so you've done pretty well on your quickfires, and there's no major surprises there, but
Do I win a prize in this, or do I get anything?
Some Wensleydale cheese when I next see you.
Oh, there we go. That's all right.
Although I might have to ask you to pick it up.
I'll collect it for you. Yeah, there we go.
So, I mean, you talked briefly about the likes of Tim Shackleton and some of the other guys that you mentioned from videos and things like that. But that's maybe some of your weathering inspiration.
Yeah.
How did you get into model railways in the first place?
Like many people of our generation, it would be Thomas the Tank Engine. The original series, the model stuff there was, even as a young child, I remember it wasn't real, but I'd been amazed at the model shots and things. And if you think about it, buildings and everything, it was all weathered. It was all felt like a real place sort of thing. So I called him my dad, but he was my granddad. My dad built me a model railway, and it was a Hornby. I'd always wanted a big loop. That was always my passion, to have a big loop, and I didn't. It was an end-to-end through my bedroom, and it went through my wardrobes as well.
Wow.
And we had Tidmouth station and the harbour, and then you went through the wardrobes, and then you had a scenic section, and you had two main lines, and then behind that further back was Thomas's branch line. And then it ended at a quarry, and it used to be frustrating. I'd have Gordon with the express flying through, and then he'd end up in a quarry, a dead end, and then he'd have to reverse it all back. And it's funny how things change, because I used to hate that being an end-to-end. End-to-end's what I like now with what I'm sort of thing. So it's funny how things change. So that was that, and yeah, that was my big influence. And you would sort of expect, I'd say, oh well, my granddad, my dad, he was a train spotter. No, he was born in 1939, the perfect age for spotting. He lived in Blackpool. You've got Blackpool North Station, Blackpool Central, Blackpool South. All he used to do was carry your bag, sir. He'd go to Central Station with a trolley, trying to get people coming off the train to the hotels. But there was no interest in train spotting. So I don't know really where this comes from, because it's not from. It was supported, it was encouraged, but it wasn't from my dad was a big train spotter of steam locos. It's a funny one.
Well, it sounds pretty clear that actually, like you say, the inspiration didn't come from a person, but it came from Thomas.
I think so.
And what would this hobby be without Thomas having inspired a generation?
It's a very good point, because we are the generation after steam ended. So I think that'd be about right. It's weird when I think being born in 85, steam disappeared 12 years prior. That sort of doesn't seem, it's not a massive gap, but it's a long enough gap that it's not what we were brought up with. And of course, you've got the preserved and heritage railway movement. But yeah, I do think the Reverend Audrey, and in fairness, the early TV series had a massive effect. That was what I got for the Ertl Thomas toys. My first one was James the Red Engine, I think, about the age of 3. And yeah, and then just at some point, for me, it's not for everybody, but for me, there was a leaping off point into real railways, and it's. But then sort of comes full circle, because then I did my interpretation of the Scarlowy Railway in 009. So that influence has always been there. I think.
I mean, most people will know I've got a toddler at home, 2.5 now. Scary to think he's 2.5 already, but we occasionally get a bit of Thomas in front of him. I'd say he's not. Yes, he's interested, but it's not it doesn't fully grab him, and I think maybe some of the early Thomas stuff now is it lacks a little bit of the colour and vibrancy of modern day kid stuff.
Yeah, I've heard that said before, and for me, I'm almost like sacrilegious. But maybe things have changed, and
there are options. There are options. So Postman Pat was a huge thing for me as a kid. So he loves Postman Pat all the way from like really early stuff all the way through to the modern stuff, which, if you forgive it for its special delivery service and helicopters and things like that, apart from that, the fundamentals are still the same. But through the sort of last couple of iterations of Postman Pat, they introduced a steam railway line into it, and the Greendale Express. And he loves the Greendale Express, and you can see some spark from that, and it was from that he very early on could point out trains, and was interested in that. So maybe there are still roots into it for kids today, but I think the current generation are definitely going to miss a Thomas influence.
I think so. I haven't really seen what, like, when I was growing up, the Heritage Railways, you'd go and you'd have all the original Audrey books you could buy. That's very much disappeared now. If there's any Thomas stuff, it tends to be the very new cartoon stuff, which I'm not a fan of, obviously, but that's not what I grew up with, sort of thing. Just funny you mentioned with Postman Pat. For me as a child growing up, the big three, the Holy Trinity with Thomas at the top, was Thomas, Postman Pat, Fireman Sam.
Fireman Sam. Yeah, I knew you were going to say Fireman Sam.
Yeah. And again, all a similar model style as well.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Very much so. I'm pleased that, like, even the modern Pat stuff has kept a style to it. I think it is more animated now, but they've retained the style and look and feel of the original Pat stuff. So that's good. Anyone who hasn't got kids is probably bored to tears right now, but hey, it's an important part of the future of our hobby.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one because you hear the headline tabloid, model railways are dying sort of thing, and I think it probably is evolving. I think, but there's more model railway manufacturers now. When we were growing up in Double O, it was Hornby and Bachmann. Look, and Accurascale, Rapido, Cavlex. You've got all these different companies now. 3D printing. I've used that when I was doing my 009 stuff with 3D printed bodies. So, and I don't. I think
if we all sit and think about it, it's not dying, like you say. It's evolving, and part of that evolution is, like you say, a lot more manufacturers. And when there's more manufacturers, that means that some of the big traditional names have to adapt, or they start to struggle. And you see some of the challenges that the likes of Hornby have. And of course their sales are going to be challenged now compared to how they were 20 years ago, because they've got a heck of a lot more competition.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily that the audience is stopping buying, it's just that they're buying from multiple different sources now, which is no bad thing, but the hobby's not dying, is it?
No, I don't think so. No, I was at the NEC with you at Model World Live. There was plenty of people going round, coming through the door. I remember Saturday morning, it was like when the doors opened, it was like a tide. It's like the tide coming in, sort of thing. So no, I think it just changes. I think certain areas, there's an older demographic. I know I did a weathering demo for the Gauge build. I really enjoyed it at Kettering, but there was an older demographic there. Definitely, I felt like one of the younger crowd sort of there. But on the other hand, some of the Ogay stuff that I've acquired, one of the reasons why I made the shift was, Dapol 14XX from Rail to Sheffield for £125. O gauge, it's not it can be expensive. I think it's the same with all aspects of model railways. It can be expensive. It doesn't have to be expensive.
And that's the reality with any hobby, right? It can be expensive. One of my other hobbies, and I've got a blurred background so you can't see it, but my other hobby is sim racing. So I do a lot of online racing. Some people call it gaming. I call it simulation racing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally with.
It's the closest that a fat guy's ever going to get to sitting in a race car. So that's my excuse. But that's an incredibly expensive hobby as well. Most hobbies are expensive, especially in today's current climate. But like you say, there are cheaper ways of going about it, and I kind of preempt a new YouTube series that I've got starting very, very soon. But I'll let people watch that when it comes out.
Okay, exciting.
It's a challenge. I'm setting myself a layout challenge.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see how I get on. So just an average day of weathering for you. How much time can you spend at a weathering station for the day? Because surely with all of the paint fumes and the deep concentration and the detail that you're looking at, it can get a bit much.
Yeah, I think it's a good point there, really. I have to have breaks just to get up and move around a little bit. One thing that's helped me now is I've got a motorised desk, because I realised how low my sort of weathering area is in a window, which isn't great because it's south facing. So actually, when the sun comes round, that I still use for spraying, but then I turn down 90 degrees and I have a motorised workbench where it's a much nicer height to work at. So that's because I was very hunched over. Yeah, I mean, I could do 6 hours almost straight, maybe with 20 minutes off, sort of thing. I find time tends to go quite quickly, actually, if I'm focused on doing something. I'd say the big thing is being well lit. Incidentally, I've got one of the lamps here, but I've got 2 of them now. Native lighting lamps, which was something that Dan put me onto. I know nobody will see this, but it's one of these ones, which is on an arm, and it's got a long LED strip. Being well lit is really so important, particularly for your eyes as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and to stop the strain. So obviously there's the brand that you mentioned, or you can pick up craft lighting from RailStuff.com. Very similar light to that. In fact, it's the one that Charlie from Chadwick used in one of his videos recently. Is available on RailStuff.com. So there you go. Selfless plug number 3. See how many more we can squeeze in before the end. But feel free to do a selfless plug for you. Where do people find Tom Foster Weathering?
Okay, so the main area is my weathering page, it's sort of gone nuts in the last 6 months. It's just I go back sort of maybe partly because I now am doing more of it, and the more you do, the more content you put out there, things increase. But I'm currently at over 4,400 followers on the Facebook page. A lot of interaction, it's great, feedback. But I've just joined Instagram as well. So I joined about a week and a half ago, and that's starting to kick in now. Got I think 165 followers, which I know is not a lot, but it's a short amount of time.
Yeah. It's a calmer place to be as well, Instagram, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I have it that posts that I can do posts that I will write for the Facebook page and they go on Instagram. But on Instagram, I tend to put a bit more of my own model stuff in there as well, sort of thing. It's definitely a different it's a different vibe.
Yes, it is.
And possibly different demographic as well.
Yes, ever so slightly. And actually, podcasts have a very different demographic as well. So tend to be a bit younger in podcasts, which is interesting as well. But I find all of that sort of stuff fascinating. I like looking at the demographics of YouTube watchers and things as well, and sort of seeing the shifts in this hobby. There is, but I think sort of touching on the conversation that we had before. If there's no kids getting involved in model railways, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because that's not necessarily where the new blood comes from in our hobby. The amount of people that I meet at shows that say, right, I've just retired and I've always wanted to da 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 da. And actually, it's those people that are coming into our hobby that are the new blood and the fresh ideas, as well as younger people.
Yeah, I was about to say, retired. It's interesting. You get a lot, and also this is where the sort of what eras of model railways are changing. You know, you're now, go back 10 years ago, it was steam locos with lake crests, that 1960s, and you're getting more of the BR Blue era because people, time moves on.
Yep, and we're getting more toothpaste as well, which is always good.
Good. I did actually. I'm quite proud of myself. I knew the reference before when you were like toothpaste. I was like, oh yeah, Network Southeast. I'm quite proud. For someone who's died in the wool steam locos, yeah, that was a nice moment.
Very good. Well, I'm going to ask you for some advice now, and hopefully this is some advice that will be helpful to listeners as well. So, alongside my layout challenge project that will start soon, I don't have a lot of room for a layout, but I intend to build myself a bit of a end-to-end piece on Engage. I've never done Engage before. So, I mean, first of all, before I ask you the advice, how do you find weathering Engage? Is it tricky?
Certain aspects can be tricky. I'm sort of actually thinking in my head. I'm thinking 009, which I know it's a scale up, but putting like etch pieces onto like nameplates and things, and particularly at end and stuff like that's a little bit trickier. But no, not really. It's the same techniques to some extent. Obviously, certain things you can't be as detailed on, but no, I'd say it's very similar. I go about it the same way that I would 4 mil or 7 mil.
Okay, good. Well, that means that you can help me then. So when I build this small, it's almost going to be more like a working diorama, if you will.
Yeah.
So where I live is Cheadle in Staffordshire, and this used to be the end of a branch line before who came and cut it. Everyone, God, the hatred for that man in this hobby is.
We need to go off on a tangent. I'm not completely anti-beaching. I know. Beaching only advised. It was Ernest Marples, who was the transport secretary, who had a road construction company, and then got done for diddling his taxes and disappeared over to Europe, I think, at one point. And it was the government that sort of enforced it. I think I can see why lines shut, and I'm not going to go into detail because this isn't what you've asked me. But I know, like, some of the branch lines were losing so much money, so I sort of understand. I think it went too far. I do think it went too far. He was only the advisor. It was the government that implemented it.
Well, beaching still gets all the.
It gets all the flack. Yeah, absolutely.
It gets all the flack. Anyway, so this used to be the end of a branch line. One of the other things that Cheadle has is it's got a lot of JCB around here. So the main place where JCB all of their stuff is assembled once it's been built is in Cheadle. So typically 50% of the workforce in Cheadle work for JCB. The other 50% work at Alton Towers, which is 3 miles down the road as well.
Oh, right.
So that's where we are. Now, I want to imagine that branch line had never closed.
Yeah.
So the station gets reimagined as a stripped down kind of modern platform with a shelter type approach, because that's what we get on. It was a branch line off of what is now the Crewe to Derby line.
Okay. Yeah.
So everything is pretty much just a halt on a platform, and any station buildings that are around have been repurposed for something else or knocked down.
Yeah.
But of course, the other thing is that the traction on it would have changed very much into East Midlands trains, being Crewe to Derby. So in preparation, I managed to pick myself up, and this is terrible for a podcast because I'm showing Tom on a camera, but we can maybe describe it to you. It's a Class 158 East Midlands train. So it's a 2-car DMU. I'm only showing you one of the cars right now, and it's very, very basic in detail. It's an old Graham Farish Bachmann product.
Yeah.
It's a little bit low in detail, but it's okay for N-Gauge. It's fine, and it will tell the story that I want to tell. But it's very clean, and it's very plasticky.
Yeah.
So I'm going to want to weather it down to make it more realistic. As a bit of a weathering novice, where would I start, and what would be the sort of 3 things that I need to do to make it look okay?
Okay, so modern units, so I would look at it in my head a bit like coaches. Anything that's passenger stock, the sides tend to be clean. Generally speaking, your sides, not always, but your sides tend to be clean. So I would do work maybe on sort of like the door, sort of the gaps on the doors, sort of where the hinge, obviously it's not that massive a gap on N-Gauge, but I would probably run a wash through that sort of thing. The dirt build-up is very much in sort of 2 places, your bogies and your roof sort of thing. So the roof would be quite mucky. I was going to say back in steam days, of course, you'd have soot off the steam motors, but in your period, you're going to have, potentially exhaust, rubbish sort of thing.
Yeah.
You can do a bit of grubbiness sometimes on the front end because, of course, that's what's sort of hitting your
dead flies and all that kind of
dead
stuff.
Dead fly, yeah. Don't look at the front of my car. But yeah, you're sort of getting anything like that around the lower half, sort of the bottom half of the unit, sort of thing. Yeah, like I say, bogies is what I'd spend a lot of time on, and again, I'd be doing, airbrushing, and then I'd be doing some dry brushing, and then I'd be doing some pigment work and things just to bring out the texture. So focus on those areas, and then you get really a nice contrast then with the sort of cleaner sides, but the really grubby bits underneath.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. The only thing that doesn't work out of what you said was the panel lines. That would have been one of my go-to. But it doesn't actually have any indentations for the panel lines.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's almost like a vinyl put over the top.
Which it can be. I understand why it would be a vinyl overlay. It's not so much on things like that, but I've had issues before where often with locomotives I like to buff the side to get a bit of a sheen. Of course, you can't do that on a vinyl because you'll end up taking it off, sort of thing. I had a HST set that I did in first Great Western livery, and you just have to be careful around any of the vinyl printing because you can't do any sort of the bodywork. You can put a bit of clear on it or something to bring up a bit of a sheen sort of thing, but I do like to buff stuff, but you can't with that sort of thing. But yeah, like you said, if there's no doors actually marked, you can't really put anything.
I mean, thankfully the panels are pretty well marked in there anyway, so yeah. So essentially for me it would be roof and undercarriage would be what I'm looking at. Any particular colours you would suggest I would need in my kit, or are you going to refer to your standard kit?
Well, again, there are so many things you can buy now of different things. I still am a bit old-fashioned, and I still stick to sort of my matte black, matte leather, gunmetal, and use different mixings of that. You look at underframes, it tends to be a dark brown to certain lighter brown in areas. Brake dust is something I like to depict on things which often look like a rust colour. That's quite nice. And then dry brushing a bit of like gunmetal over axle boxes and things like that. That's quite nice. Brings up a bit of that oily sheen on it and things. Okay.
And do you do much with any kind of oil effects? So, for example, I know obviously MIG do the range of oil brushes and fuel and oil spill effects and things like that. Do you do much with that?
Again, I sort of make it up with what I use. But I'm thinking of experiment with some of these other things. What I tend to do, so on my O gauge wagons with the axle box, I tend to mix. I have some of the Johnson's Clear, which is like gold dust now. It's a floor polish, and I think military models used it for like the canopies on aircraft and things, but works really well for anywhere you want sort of look like a sheen. So on my pannier tanks, I often do like the water spilt down the tank. I use clear for that. I tend to now mix clear with a bit of black soot, so you get a really sort of congealy sort of.
Okay.
So I've started experimenting, doing a little bit of that, which works quite nicely. But yeah, it's one of those things. I have my ways that work, but I am conscious of try some other things to add to sort of my library of things I use.
Okay. At some point, I'm going to need to actually just bite the bullet and do it. But I have got a little collection of like old bodies. So one of the things I always say to people who are scared about weathering, and I know you said right at the beginning that you don't do this, but you should, is sometimes there's some shows I go to and there's a guy there who is selling, he's got rummage buckets of just loco bodies.
Yes.
That can be £3, £4, £5 a time. Some of them can be a bit damaged, a bit ropey, whatever. That's fine. I pick them up and I've got them in a little box that one day I'll use those for practicing weathering on.
And that's exactly the right thing to do. I was a lot younger then, and I was impulsive, and I've probably not changed, to be honest. But yeah, I would say, practice on something that doesn't really matter. There's so many different products you can get now, even compared to 15 years ago, sort of thing. I'm probably a bit old-fashioned in that I do use enamels, because a lot of people use acrylics, and if it works for you, absolutely great. I find acrylics useful for certain things, but not for others. I don't get on with acrylics spraying them. I find it dries so quick. I find that I don't get anything. I find I get a better effect with enamels. But yeah, do practice on something that doesn't matter first. If you're completely, this is the first time you've done it, just have a little. You don't even need to think, I've got to weather this whole thing. Just do, like, I don't know, the side of a van. You don't have to do the whole thing. Just to try out some techniques. There's so many good books out there. If you wanted to read up more, Tim Shackleton's done a few. And Martin Welch although he's a bit old now, it's a Wild Swan publication. There's a lot of black and white photos in it, which is a shame because you would like to see the colour. But that is very good for sort of detailed he works in 7mm sort of things, gauge. But there's so many, there's good resources out there, Facebook, RM Web. I'm debating at some point I might do a book on this. We'll just see. We'll get the house move sorted first.
I have a book in the works, but it's been in the works for many years now.
What was it? What was it? Kathy Millett said on one of your podcasts, which everybody has at least one book inside them, or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have all of the materials prepared to do a weathering reference book. So essentially a picture book. But a lot of the time, if we're going to do weathering, then we end up scrabbling around looking for photos, and we're trying to zoom in on bits of people that are taking pictures of trains. Whereas actually we want to see the side of the rails, we want to see the sleepers, we want to see the different types of ballast. So I have been out with the camera and captured a load of photographs, and at some point I will finish putting them into a book and get that printed. But
we are kindred spirits, because I was at Highley taking photographs of the track and the sleepers for weathering reference.
I was at Carnforth last weekend, and I think somebody thought I was trying to walk off the end of the platform or something, because they started sort of looking at me strangely, because I was taking pictures of the signal gantry up close. And
but you know what, it's an interesting point. Well, I say it's interesting. There will be people dozing off at this, but you look at ballasting now and you look at ballasting during the steam era, and it's completely different. You know, you look at, you know, most, you know, of the 50s and things, the ballast is in between the sleepers. I think it always looks really beautiful. Then you have the sleeper ballast. But you know, you probably be a better person to advise on this, but mainline running now, you often have the ballast completely covers the sleepers, doesn't it, on the main line?
Well, and some of that I think is about the shape of the sleepers has changed. So, you know, the old wooden ones just used to be a flat piece of wood, whereas now the concrete ones are actually sort of contoured, and they dip down a little bit in the middle, which is where I think then some of the ballast gets over the top, and it is more common. But you're right, there is still something modelling wise that looks better about no ballast on the sleepers, please.
It looks neat. I think that's what it is.
It does. But also, I really struggle with the concept of concrete sleepers on a model railway. Is I find they look too stark, but I think that's just because we're so used to you know, black plastic sleepers.
Yes.
That our eyes kind of get taken aback by concrete sleepers. But I guess there's also a lot of weathering down that we should be doing before we even lay our track. Do you do much on the track side as well? Or?
Yeah. So I've diorama O gauge that me and Dan did, which I take to shows, as we know, for displaying stock, and we initially did it with like a spray of like camouflage brown, but then I went back and then I will do some dry brushing, which on a big layout it's a lot to do, sort of thing, but this was manageable at O gauge 8 foot. But I will do sort of lighter colours, and then I'll put washes on them and I vary it up a little bit. So yeah, I track work I love when it's weathered nicely. It's a thing of beauty.
Yeah,
you can tell I'm single, can't you?
I don't know. I think even those of us that aren't probably have even more need to.
I think we're all 12-year-old boys deep down. I think that's what it is. Really.
Absolutely, we are. On the subject of track work, though, probably one of the biggest questions I get asked time and time again is, what's the simplest and most effective way to add rust to the side of rails?
Okay, so I do a spray with the camouflage brown does the sleepers, but it also does the rail edges. And then I tend to, I sometimes use some of my matte leather to go over the, it's a Revel 84, it's quite good for rust effect. But I also use some of the AK Interactive washes, they're enamel washes, and they do a rust one. And that's quite nice if you've got the base colour down, it's nice how it just then forms around the edges of like your chairs and stuff.
Okay. So you're using a base color spray paint and then going over with a rust color wash. So obviously you can do that with the items that you've mentioned, or with other stuff as well that you can get a well-known.
Yeah, camouflage brown, which is a Halfords. Halfords done a big change on their paints, which is really annoying at the moment. They've some of the top coats that I would use for certain, my Scarloey engines, when I'd sprayed them, it was like whatever it was, Vauxhall something. They're now they're like coded, and you have to look in a book. It's really annoying that they've done that. But I think you can still get. I've used their primers really exclusively. I think they're all the same, and I think they still do camouflage brown. But yeah, just double check because they have changed.
And of course, there are other products available from a well-known
absolutely. I can't think of the name, but I know Dan uses some different primers, which I might start doing, because at the moment where I live, Halfords is quite a drive. It's about 30 miles away in either direction.
Yeah.
And I can't think where there's a Halfords down in Herefordshire. Probably Hereford, probably. But yeah, to be honest, it might be easier ordering something online.
Yeah. Can you think of any websites to order from?
RailStuff.
Boom! Lovely. You can come back sometime. You can come back.
Oh, great. That's okay. I'm probably a little bit slow on the uptake there.
You mentioned before that you're a teacher.
Yes.
But violin,
peripatetic violin teacher. That's what I've done since 2009. Teaching pupils of various ages and things. Yeah, I've had some good times with it, but it's tough when you're on a job that is 0 hours contract or self-employed, and your income just completely varies, sort of thing. And yeah, I know I'm self-employed with what I do now, but I've got a lot of weathering, a lot of clients now. I've got stuff coming in. I feel it's a more stable environment to work than with the weathering than the teaching is now. Well,
that's do you know what? And it's we all have that dream of working in our hobby, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a funny one sometimes, because for me, I have to have my own stuff in the background that I can still work on.
Yeah.
I think if I didn't have that, I think it becomes a lot harder when you're just weathering constantly for other people and you don't have your own stuff. So I find it's a symbiotic relationship between my own stuff and doing it for other people. It's sort of similar stuff that Dan said when he spoke to you. Once you have pressure put on you, it can be a little bit of like, oh gosh, right, I've got to get this done for a certain date, sort of thing. You can have the pressure with it. It's one of those. I genuinely enjoy it. I do. At one time, there was that sort of like, oh gosh, other people's models sort of thing. That's a natural thing to feel when you're sort of starting off doing it as a business. But now it's just, I know how certain models behave. I know that Bachmann's tampo printing doesn't take a lot of effort for it to come off. Whereas Hornby, it's totally different. Hornby, it really does stick. And if you want to renumber something, you're working a long time with T-cut to get it off. So it's knowing how different models react, what you do to prepare for that. I often put like clear over a transfer, just so it gives it a little protection, sort of thing. But like you say, I am an enthusiast with steam. It scratches an itch for anytime I've sort of thought, oh yeah, I'd like a Duchess. I don't need to now. I can have a client's one to weather. I take the photos, and often that is enough to sort of go, it scratches that itch, definitely.
It must be scary sometimes, though, somebody sending you a £300-400 loco and yeah.
Yeah, I think when you get to sort of kit built locos of maybe 7 mils, that's where it's a little bit okay, right. This is an expensive model, sort of thing. Again, it's just always be aware what you're dealing with. Never rush in with it. Just I find as long as I like to know the night before what I'm going to be doing, sort of just to mentally prepare myself for. Okay, so I'm weathering this, right? Okay, have a look at some reference photos. How's the client sent me some? Oh, they have. Have just to sit down and go, okay, right, we'll do a bit of that. Or I like that effect. I find if I'm mentally prepared, I'm ready to go.
That's good. There's obviously some real confidence there as well in what you do and what you've done in the past, which is great.
That's taken, as someone who has suffered from like low confidence, mental health, it's been taking my time to get there, but I think I'm sort of on the right track with sort of, you've got to have the confidence in what you do. You've got to be going, yeah, I think what I do is good. I've never claimed to be the best. There's some amazing modelers out there, but if it's good enough for me, that's enough, sort of thing. And I admit I am quite, anal on things about, wanting to look right.
Well, that's good.
I think it has, it's been a challenge in some aspects, like I say, from a mental health point of view, and so, but we're getting there.
But at the same time, and I've talked about this a number of times on this podcast, a hobby like this can be incredibly beneficial for mental health as well.
Absolutely. It's that creating, for me, it's that creating a whole world, and it's an escapism to somewhere you can go. It's the closest thing to time travel for me, which is interesting because it will be different for other people. If you're doing something that's modern image, it's not a time travel. When I say modern image, I want to clarify it. I'm not one of those who classes 1965. When I say modern image, I think of like today's railways, last 10 years sort of thing. But for me, it's disappearing to a world that's a lot quieter, that doesn't have modern technology, doesn't have smartphones. Which I say that because I'm terrible for being on my iPhone. Mr. Everson tells me off for that.
We're all like it though these days, aren't we? It's. I find myself sitting with the boys sometimes, and I pick up my phone. I think, what am I doing?
Yeah,
little lad's right in front of me, and he's never going to be this age again. But
so easy to do. You just get onto like a video, and then you just start swiping reels, and it's like, no, stop. It's just. I try now, switch off, watch some TV, or just read a book in an evening. That's my challenge.
Yeah, it's how they get you, isn't it? It's how they get you. It's how they trap you.
Exactly. No, but like you say, from a mental health point of view, it's the creativity as well, and it's focusing on something that maybe helps if you're not feeling great or in a great place. It's a distraction, a healthy distraction, I think.
I want to sort of finish up on one final piece of advice that you might be able to give budding weatherers, and that is that somebody who wants to try it for the first time, somebody who wants to get stuck in and go weathering, what are the top 3 tips that you would give them to begin with? And I know that's putting you on the spot quite a bit, but what are the top 3 tips you would give somebody who wants to get stuck into weathering?
I'd say it's a bit cliched. Have a go. Just have a go. I think 2 would be everything you do, you'll learn from. So, and you can always, to some extent, go back to things and slightly change things. The big thing for me is observation. It's go and look at the real thing. Even, I know preserve railways, steam locos are particularly clean. I don't think from a steam loco perspective here, but there's lots of great colour photos. I'm buying a lot of books on just colour albums so my sort of interest is Western Region branch lines. So I'm not looking at steam locos, I'm looking at the wagons in the yard going, look at the paintwork on that, patch paintwork, that's cool. So I'd say try to look at prototype images to work from rather than other people's models.
That's a really strong piece of advice, actually, to look at prototype photos rather than other people's models, because develop your own style, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so it's funny, I see other weatherers out there who, and I look at it and I go, I know who that is, people I really admire, and I go, can tell. I think we have our own sort of signature in a way, and I think that's quite nice. But yeah, I'd definitely say look at prototype pictures or of an engine or what you'd like to, and just look at the little thing and go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I wonder what that is. Or why is that weathered like that? I've done some De Norwick weathering of some of the Alice class locos that used to work at the Slate Quarry at De Norwick, and some of them are like they weather from like across the tank from the front, black to red, and I'm still like, how has that happened? It's such an interesting way, and again, I don't know why, but I can look at the image and try and replicate it. So that's where my enjoyment comes from it. So yeah, I'd say that's my 3 sort of thing. Have a go. Practice. I'm going to say it, but practice on something that's not important. do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah. You ever thought about teaching weathering? Because you're a teacher by trade.
The problem I have is this is now a full-time job doing clients' work.
Yeah.
It's that I might do some one-to-one sessions when I've moved. Dan's talked about doing a similar thing with bigger painting. But it's like, I don't want to give away too much of my techniques.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I like explaining stuff, and I'm happy to do it at a weathering demo, but where you're there where someone can be making notes and things, and it's like, some of the stuff I have developed, it's purely just protecting my business in that sense. It's just to make sure that I've still got an income at the end of this. But then I have said I'm looking at doing a book at some point. So yeah, I'm not against the idea. It's just thinking how I would do that.
Yeah, perfect. Well, look, I think all of us will come together and wish you the best with the sale of the house and
very much
and the move down to Herefordshire. It's your passion for the railways, but also what you do is very, very clear, and I think that is very important in what we all do. So kudos to you for that. And also I would say that if you see Tom out and about at shows or events or wherever, go chat to him. He's very approachable, easy to chat to, and I'm sure he'll give you some of the wisdom that he's shared with us on the podcast as well.
Absolutely.
But in the meantime, if you want to book some of Tom's services, I guess search for Tom Foster Weathering on Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah, so Tom Foster Weathering on Facebook. Like I say, I'm on Instagram as well. I'm on RM Web as well, and I have a thread in the small supply section. But also, if you just want to email me, my email is tomfosterweathering@gmail.com.
There we go, tomfosterweathering@gmail.com. Hit Tom up and book yourself in for some pretty spectacular weathering. I have to say, I've spent some time looking at some of your stuff on Facebook and Instagram just lately, and the detail and realism is spectacular. So fantastic work, and some of your photography as well of the work that you've done is.
I really like the photography side of things. Yeah, I got a Canon 650D. Dan recommended it because Dan's done professional photography, and yeah, I love sort of bringing it to life, sort of thing. And again, just trying to create a little world and a little story with that. Yeah, no, I love the photography, really do.
Yeah, well, like we've always said at RailStuff, it's scenery that creates a story.
Absolutely, totally with you there. I love doing the scenic work.
Yeah, you add the scenery, you add a bit of high quality weathering as well, and all of a sudden you haven't got some track on a bit of wood. You've got your own little world, and there's something really incredible about that. So thank you for sharing your passion and your story. And it's been great to meet you and be able to discuss things a bit further. So thank you for coming on.
No, thank you for having me.
So that was Tom Foster from Tom Foster Weathering. I'm sure you'll agree, a very interesting guy to chat to and learn about not just his techniques but his inspirations and his background. Of course, if you've not listened before, there is a reasonable back catalogue of episodes. I know there are many complaints that there's not enough, and I will continue to do my best to work on that. But there is a back catalogue, and you can actually find it now on our YouTube channel as well. So if you're not already subscribed on YouTube, then please do so. We are also now available on Patreon as well. So we're not really thinking of doing any special extras for Patreons at the moment. It's more just if you want to contribute towards the running of the podcast and the growth of RailStuff, then please feel free, but absolutely no pressure to do so whatsoever. If you feel like it, then there's some options there. That's the end of this episode. Don't forget, once again, POD10 is your discount code for 10% off your first order at rail-stuff.com. That is the last of the selfless plugs because it is the end. Thank you very much for listening, and we will catch you back here the next time.